So much for Rabbi Shiner for allowing me to be a part of your beautiful community. And of course, the kind words from my father, which I'm very flattered by. What I would like to do tonight is, which tonight my time, but this afternoon your time, is I'd like to just give you some idea of this new book about what it's really based on. And what I want to do is make the ideas much broader than the world of just education. The book is really written for parents and for teachers, but like we all know, the most important part of being a great parent or being a great teacher is being a great example yourself. And what I'd like to do is try and open up the class tonight to speak about some ideas which I think apply to all of us, no matter what stage of life we are at, and try and make things very relevant to people on the call. Okay? And I'm going to speak for a little bit, then I'm going to bring Rabbi Shiner in to share some of his wisdom, and we'll engage in a dialogue. And then there'll be an opportunity for questions at the end if there are any questions. What I'm going to do as well is share some slides to make it a little bit more engaging so you can follow along with some of the logic along the way. So let me show you like this. Okay. And wonderful. Okay. So the book that just came out with is called Nurture Their Nature. It's called The Torah's Essential Guidance for Parents and Teachers. And the book is actually really quite interesting. And people often ask me, where did I come up with the idea to write this book? And really, why did I write it? And for the past 17 years, I have been the Dean of Students at an institution here in Jerusalem, and really working with young professionals who come from little to no background of Jewish life. They are doing quite well in their careers, and now they're looking to gain more insight into how Judaism can empower their life. And there's really kind of three major areas that I saw needed help, and there weren't that many great solutions out there. And this is kind of the background of how I got to my book. The issues are self-esteem issues. You know, if you're looking to make a lot of money in the world today, if you write some sort of self-help book with the word self-esteem in the title, you're good to go. But that issue, as we know, is something which is penetrating all walks of society, and it's a huge issue. Even though people may be very successful in many of their professional endeavors, self-esteem issues can still be quite problematic and can still be very high. People, in addition, have a very backwards paradigm of when we want to grow and change. In the world today, people are trying to figure out how to become better, how to reach their potential, how to get rid of certain traits in their life. And I saw this as something that people were really struggling with in a very powerful way, and they didn't really have the solutions for it. And probably one of the most powerful places I saw people really struggling with was trying to figure out that we live in a world today where our careers are so much a part of our life. How do we figure out the correct career direction? And even more than that, maybe if we're in the right career, but we don't feel like we're really going at, maximum kind of speed, how do we make sure that we can really flourish in our professional endeavors? And these are really three areas that I've been dealing with over the past years. And what I try to deal with is this book is the way that Judaism deals with all three of these areas. And that is what my real goal was to bring out how Judaism deals with all of these three areas through one very simple idea. Okay? Now, just to go a little further, if you look like this, there is a field in psychology today called positive psychology. People know it as the science of happiness. And it is a very popular field today. It's been around for about 20 years or so right now. It's really kind of come on the scene. And it's really the science of where things are going right. Most things, when we look at the world of psychology, things function according to a disease model of where are the issues, and let's try and fix those issues. Positive psychology comes along and says, where are things going right, and how can we make those things better? And the ideas that I deal with in my book, although I don't bring in any psychology at all, it's all based on Jewish sources. The ideas I speak about in my book run very parallel to this new cutting edge world of psychology called positive psychology. And so much so, I spent years of my life going back and getting a master's degree in this very area of research. And at the crux of all of positive psychology, it is a formula called PERMA. And PERMA is basically about that there are 5 elements of well-being, okay? Hence the slide in front of you, PERMA, okay? It's an acronym for 5 different elements. And what the field of positive psychology says is the more that you have these 5 elements in your life, the more well-being you have. And at the heart of the field of positive psychology, and this is one of the most amazing things, at the heart of the field of positive psychology, the way that a person is going to get these elements in the most powerful manner in their life is by one thing and one thing only, and that's by using your natural strengths to gain as much as you can within each of these elements. And I'll explain more soon. The world of Judaism basically has one fundamental verse that speaks about what education should look like. And it's speaking about education towards children, but it's education across the board, and it really applies to education within ourselves. And that is the idea that education needs to be done on an individual basis. And what the real goal of education is to figure out who people are and then educate them accordingly. And to go a little bit further is like this. All of us have PDF manuals for every little gadget that we get in our lives. It comes with some sort of device, some sort of folder or file that we download, and we usually don't get through the whole thing. It ends up being numerous pages. But nothing in this world comes without a PDF manual. And what's that PDF manual? That's telling you how to use your device at maximum capacity, how to use it in the right way. And human beings also come with a PDF manual of how to live their life at maximum capacity, how to function on all cylinders, how to get the most out of who you are and how you were created. And the PDF manual of a human being is actually quite simple. The way a person lives their life according to maximum capacity is when a person not only understands what their natural strengths are, but they live their life accordingly. That is the gasoline, that is the fuel, that is the PDF manual of how a person comes alive and how a person really flourishes. And therefore, with this understanding in mind, what my entire book is based upon is that for speaking about the world of education, my book brings the major thesis in Judaism about what real education should look like, which is the importance of not only understanding what your natural strengths are, but living your life accordingly. And therefore, the first place to do that is with yourself, and then you can do it with all those people around you. And this information goes so far that it's not just talking about parents and teachers. It applies if you're a manager in a company, you're running an organization, you name it. Okay, so I want to just go a little bit further, maybe take you through some more concepts before I bring Rabbi Shiner in here. But let me show you just some ideas which I think are quite fascinating that I try and spend a lot of time speaking about, and also trying to show how it's actually not the right way. There is a fascinating reality that the Gallup did a study where they found that 77% of American parents, when they get a report card, the initial place that they look when they get that report card is where is the worst grade. That's the first place that they look. Okay, not so great. Moving a little bit further, okay, there's a famous book called the DSM. If anyone has spent any time in the world of social work, psychology, psychiatry, this book is the ultimate manual that speaks about every possible diagnosis in the world of well-being that is possibly out there today, Unfortunately, these books are getting bigger, they are expanding, they are becoming more needed. You will not walk into any office of a therapist, psychiatrist, you name it, that will not have this book on their shelf. This book speaks about all the issues that we have, and it's done in a world-class manner, and it's unbelievable the amount of money and time and effort that's been put into this manual, and it's quite a fascinating work. Now, just an interesting thing, just to show everyone, when I was growing up at the Palm Beach Day School, so we were given many essays to write. And the real science of when you were writing an essay was to figure out, the teacher gave you an assignment that the essay had to be 5 pages. And the goal was to figure out how can you write as little as possible, but still make it look like 5 pages. So thank God the computer has different font options, or you can make the margins a bit smaller. So why am I telling you this? Is a few years ago, Gallup Press got together and they said, well, there's so much out there about measuring where people are going wrong. Let's create a book about the natural strengths of where people are going right, the things that people actually do in a positive way. And they put millions of dollars into this project. And the reason why I said my Palm Beach Day School analogy is because after tons of research and lots of money, they came up with a small little dinky book. And in this book, all the tricks that I used at Palm Beach Day School as far as how to make the font bigger and how to make the margins a bit smaller to get to 5 pages, they seem to use as well. And they came out with that we can classify 34 natural strengths that human beings have. And if you ask me, I think it's a bit repetitive. I think they have about 27. So why is it that all of a sudden when we come to describe where things are going wrong, we can give you a PhD thesis, we can be articulate as can be. And when it comes to describing where things are going right, all of a sudden people fall very short and our vocab fits into about a 3rd grade level. And that's a major fundamental problem. And I want to go a little bit further, just as far as how far this goes and actually how it can play out, especially in probably one of the biggest topics that people usually end up speaking to me about, which is the world of change. And people always want to know, and people spend lots of money, which is how do you actually change something in your life? You have things that hold you back, you have things you want to accomplish, you have things that you really want to do, and we get stuck and we repeat ourselves nonstop. And there's a whole self-help world out there about how people can change and develop. And Judaism says very clearly that the model that people have is totally wrong. Because what's the model people have? People have the model of, let me first look at all my issues, and then I'll fix those issues up, and then I'll become the person I want to become. And what's fascinating is that in the past 17 years since my institution started in Israel, where I've been the dean of students, no one has ever walked into my office once and said to me, listen, Rabbi Lynn, there are some issues I have in my life I'd like to work on, but forget those issues. Here's where things are going well. How can I do better at those things? Never once has a conversation come close to that. And the world of Judaism says when a person is looking to really grow and change, he got the whole model wrong. The way to grow and change is by first looking at where are things going right in your life and become amazing at those things. And then we can work on the issues that you have. And let me try and show you an analogy to kind of bring out this point a little more, okay? A hot air balloon. Maybe not the most popular thing in Palm Beach, but people go on hot air balloons. Now, hot air balloons work in a fascinating way. The way they work is you have a hot air balloon stuck on the ground, and there are ropes that hold the hot air balloon down. Now, let's pretend those ropes, okay, and that hot air balloon represents something different. The hot air balloon is a human being trying to grow in life, trying to change. And those ropes are all the issues that hold you back in life. So what happens? People spend a lot of time and a lot of effort doing everything they can to do what? Get rid of those ropes. And after a long time, maybe they actually are able to get rid of those issues in their life. But there's a huge problem. All of a sudden, you cut the ropes, and voila, the balloon is still stuck on the ground. How come it's not soaring and taking off? You know, I used to have a dog growing up that terrorized many people in Palm Beach. And one of the most fascinating things is that when you had the dog on the leash, as soon as you let the leash go, bam, the dog was running for Clark Beach, and that was it. But here, and the way people grow is all of a sudden they have these issues in their life. They try and spend a lot of time, energy, effort, money, and they cut the issues away, but the balloon is still on the ground. And the reason is because there's a problem, because that's not how real growth actually happens. And the way Judaism says how real growth should actually happen is that there's another part of the hot air balloon that makes real change. And that's called the flame. Without the flame being ignited, the balloon will stay on the ground. And Judaism says the way a person really should grow and change in life is, you know what? Let's do like this. The balloon is tied to the ground. The balloon is sitting there, and you got all these ropes that are there, and they are holding the balloon down. The first thing to do is pull that flame. When you pull that flame, all of a sudden, just like my dog, the balloon is rising towards the sky, dying to get off the ground. And what happens? Many of those ropes, they break quite fast because the balloon has momentum, the balloon has a direction. And then what's fascinating is like this, is all of a sudden, let's look at it even more, is that now you have this balloon, and that balloon is you. That flame, that's called your natural strengths. Get that flame lit, get that flame going, and the balloon will begin to take off. And all of a sudden, you'll see many of those issues that you have in your life will fall away. But here's an amazing thing, is not only now is the balloon is headed in a certain direction, but many of those issues that you thought you had, they actually fade away. Now, what about the issues you do have? Well, of course, you have to deal with your issues in life, but now it's always much easier to cut a rope when there's tension on the rope than when there's no tension. So actually the ability to work on your issues that are bothering you is much easier now when that balloon is headed in a certain direction. And just to go back to this whole idea is that when people look to really change and really grow, the first step to figure out is what makes me special, what am I great at, what are my natural strengths? And for a person to become amazing at those things, and then you'll see that so many of the issues that you thought you had not only fade away, but it actually becomes much easier to work on the issues that are real issues. You know, just to bring out an example, it's a fascinating thing. You know, I find sometimes driving around Jerusalem here, this person bothers me, and the weather bothers me, and the guy cuts me off and I'm frustrated, and this and that. So that seems like normal behavior sometimes. Well, all of a sudden I have these random days once in a while where I'm in a great space and I'm feeling amazing. And the guy cuts me off, don't worry about it. There's a bit too much traffic. It's okay. The person doesn't show up on time for the meeting. Don't worry about it. So all of a sudden, amazing thing, that what I see is that when I'm in a good place and my life feels great and I'm functioning at full capacity, so many of the things that normally bother me actually fade away quite fast and are no longer a real part of my life. And the question becomes, how do people actually get to that state of being? And the way you get to that state of being is a person actually living their life properly, which is what a person initially focuses on. What are my natural strengths, which is your PDF manual. And now you live your life accordingly. And therefore, when we speak about the ideas of the fundamentals of Jewish education is really built off of this idea that if you're in the world of trying to help people grow, the first thing you have to do is help them figure out what their natural strengths are. And the second thing you have to do is help facilitate a life for them where they can use these natural strengths. But the first place where that should begin is with ourselves. Now, just to go for another few minutes here, just to show how far this idea goes, and just to show that even beyond children, I deal with many times young professionals or midlife professionals, where this really plays out tremendously is when it comes to people figuring out what their career direction should be, or even more than that, career flourishing. And if you look at the research in the field of positive psychology, but put positive psychology aside, the key way of how a person really figures out not only what their correct career path should be, but even more than that, how to actually thrive once they're in their career, is when a person not only is at a level, at a place in their life where they understand what their natural strengths are, but they're using their natural strengths on a daily basis within their professional life. And therefore, you see this idea, this concept of not only knowing what our natural strengths are, but using them. Really, I could bring you examples upon examples for a few hours about how this really plays out in being a key factor in all areas of our life. You know, there's a whole world today which has become very popular over the past year and a half, which is the world of resilience. And how do people become more resilient? And a lot of the world of resilience training is out there speaking to people about how can you prepare yourself in the best possible way for difficulties that will come up in life, because difficulties will come up. As we've seen this past year, it's been a very difficult year for many people. So what can you do to prepare yourself so that when difficulties come up, you can not only get through it, but you can actually thrive after it? And at the heart of resilience training, at the very center of the whole concept, where they're using it in schools, they're using it in companies, they're using it especially in the military, which is amazing to see, that the heart of resilience training is the fact that the way we can make people to be the most resilient as possible, where they can not only ride the difficulties in life, but thrive after them, is when people are functioning according to their PDF manual, which is what? Not only understanding what their natural strengths are, but living their life accordingly. Okay? And there are many, many, many other concepts, again, like I could go into, but I guess at this point, what I'd like to do is bring Rabbi Shiner in just to maybe turn this into more of a discussion that we'll have together, and then we'll open it up for questions, comments, reactions from the audience.
Thank you, Peter, for that fantastic presentation, which is a great springboard for so many important topics. So I just want to begin by, you talked about self-esteem. I once heard something from Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky of blessed memory. And he said, imagine a person who owns a home and he puts it up on the market for sale, but he undervaluates the worth of the house and he sells it for less than its true value. He cheated himself out of a large sum of money by undervaluating his home. He said, if a person would feel terrible about selling himself short financially on the value of his house, he says, what a great tragedy is if a person goes through life underevaluating themselves, their very being. And it's perhaps the greatest loss we could suffer in life if we don't have true self-esteem and self-worth. So raising kids, clearly, that's one of the most important tools and skills we want to give our children. And you did say that the first part of being a parent is role modeling that behavior. So you can't really teach your kids how to have self-esteem and self-worth if you don't have the self-esteem and self-worth yourself, because kids pick up on your body language more than the words you say. So in the limited amount of time we have, based on your research and expertise and knowledge of Torah, are there some practical tips? And I guess it goes hand in hand, how a person could have better self-esteem and communicate the value of their children to themselves, to know their self-worth. And I'll just throw in maybe something you'll comment on. To what extent should parents often tend to praise their kids a lot, feeling, if I tell my kid he's so smart, he's so wonderful, he's the best this, he's the best that, you're such a tzaddik, you're amazing, you're incredible, that will help them have self-esteem because their parents tell them how they're the most special kids in the world. And as you address self-esteem, you have 5 daughters, thank God. We read about the 5 daughters of Slavchad yesterday in the Parsha, so we could relate to someone with 5 daughters. And I don't know if there's a difference in terms of boys or girls when it comes to self-esteem issues. So if you could touch on that as well. But what are some practical steps and tips people can take to acquire self-esteem for themselves, but as regard to parenting, to instill it in our children?
So I'll tell you like this. I'll start with ourselves, which is the most important. Is that if you look, and this is probably the main thing I speak about in our book, and I actually spoke to Dr. Tversky about our book, and he was very supportive of it, is that if you look at the way that Judaism says of how a person builds their self-esteem, so the answer is very clear, which is you have to realize that you have a special, unique purpose in this world. So how does a person discover what that special, unique purpose is? Well, the Almighty gave you a clear PDF manual as far as how to discover what that path should be. And the key to success of a person building their self-esteem is that the more that they live their life according to their natural strengths, which is their unique PDF, what you're going to see is that their self-esteem goes up tremendously. And on a very practical level, what people need to be thinking about is that when they're trying to grow, when you're trying to become better, that what people really need to spend time thinking about is, you're right, we have to look at our issues. This holds me back, and that holds me back, and that holds me back. But what's more important is to figure out, what am I really great at? What am I naturally drawn towards? What do I naturally shine doing? And how can I do more of that? And if people began to engage in more conversations with their mentors, with their therapists, with their friends about topics like that, the world of self-esteem would look very different. And that is the key practical way of how a person actually builds their self-esteem. And there are many tools out there. There are online tools. I have them on my website I can share with you. And there are many way beyond that of how a person can actually discover what their natural strengths are and become much better at those things. And therefore, if you're looking for practical tips, that's what you have to be focusing on in order to build your self-esteem. Someone once asked me, what's the litmus test of good self-esteem? And the real litmus test is, can you celebrate the success of other people around you, especially those people that are similar to you? And the only way you can really do that is when you really feel that you are excelling and you are unique. And the way we can get to that place is when people really understand this is what makes me special, and they actually become great at living their life according to those special things. Now, to make a step further, telling our children or telling people in the workplace, people who work for us, you're amazing, you're awesome, you're special, doesn't do that much. People are awesome at being able to latch onto things, but you need something to latch onto. When people are given labels in a very specific way, you're lazy, you have this problem, you have that, we hold on to it for life. When we're given general things, it actually doesn't get very far. And it kind of goes in one ear and out the other. And that's why we say that's why we call our book called Nurture Their Nature, which is a famous debate, what's more important? Or even more than that, what should we focus on? What the environment is, the nurturing of a child, or what the natural way of a child actually is. And we say the real goal of parenting, the real goal of building someone is to figure out, here's what their natural way is, and now let me nurture that. Just like any good gardener in Palm Beach, to keep it immaculate the way it is, when he sees palm trees, he knows exactly how to treat them so they become flourishing palm trees with coconuts. And when he sees, outside of Main Street, some sort of beautiful bouquet next to a fountain, he knows exactly what these flowers need in order for them to become ones that really flourish. And therefore, the more that we can be a real guide to help people discover what their natural strengths are and help guide them in that direction, that can be one of the greatest tools and greatest gifts that a parent, a manager, or anyone can give those people that they're trying to guide.
Thank you, Peter, for that eloquent answer. Very true, of course, what you just said. Regarding what you just weaved your way into, which is focusing on the natural strengths of the child, of course, what comes to mind is what our rabbis tell us, that a person should always study the subject that they desire most. And one of the explanations is because the subject that you desire most, you will master very well. And that will boost your self-confidence and your ability to study. And from there, you'll be able to study other subjects well, because you've already gained confidence in your subject that your heart naturally gravitates towards. So, and we know our rabbis tell us, ma'at or, a little bit of light expels a lot of darkness. So by focusing on the positive versus the negative, we automatically, like the hot balloon example you gave, it makes it easier to do away with the negativity. But my question to you is, we all know human nature. If you go through your day and you do 10 things very well, but you stumble on 10 other things, you sort of miss the mark, or you fail, or you make mistakes, or you fall short, the brain will naturally gravitate towards the things you failed at during that day, that you did not come up successful at, rather than dwell on all the wonderful things you did right that day. So being that that's human nature, and maybe Hashem made it that way because he wants us to always improve, but you're saying that the real way to improve is not to focus on the things that you failed at during the day, the mistakes you made, but to actually focus on your successes and do more of that. So how do you shift gears? And is that what you're saying, that at the end of the day, don't look at the things you did wrong, focus on the things you did very well and try to build on them?
So I think like this, I think for sure that's human nature. And, a lot of times in human nature, we respond to the urgency of the moment. And therefore, when negative things happen, we feel the consequences of those things and how they can impact our life right now in a drastic way. And therefore, we put a lot of, put a huge spotlight on those things. And that's why people, when, issues come up, I deal with a lot of marriages, and, they, when things get pretty bad, then they really want to deal with them. But where's all the positive, proactive growth happening? And the world of change and the world of growth takes a lot of effort. It's not going to happen just naturally. And therefore, people have to learn how to incorporate certain things in their life so they can proactively build towards something. Anything in this world which is worth living for takes hard work and always has some sort of resistance to it. Therefore, having our lives be the most complete lives possible is going to take effort, and we're going to have to override just our natural thoughts or our urgent desires. And as people look back on their day, we can't be naive to say, I should ignore all my negative issues. Those need attention. But the real place a person has to be thinking about is, where are things going well in my life? What am I doing right? What am I naturally drawn towards? And how can I be doing more of that? I spend time in the world of consulting when I deal with, organizations or companies. And a lot of the consulting model out there is, okay, let's figure out where the issues are and let's, deal with those issues. And the model that I use is, okay, let's figure out, what do you do really well? And how can we do much more of that? And again, what I find is that when you base the model on that, all of a sudden, the company changes very fast. Many of their kind of smaller issues fade away. And then you can really address, okay, what are the couple of things that are actually holding you back?
Thank you. Another very important subject you touched upon is resilience. And these days, I guess there's always things going on, but in light of some of the recent events that have occurred, both in Israel and here in South Florida, it feels like we're living through some very difficult times. And life, in a way, is, I would say, getting more complex today, with, the advance of so many of the blessings that also bring challenges with it as well. The abundance, the affluence that we have today, the technology we have today. And so we're now in the 9-day period where we mourn the destruction of our temples. And we see that the Jewish people have had tremendous resilience, that we've survived 2,000 years of persecution and oppression. And yet there's something about us that we're able to persevere and overcome the most difficult challenges. And since your book is based on Torah values, what are some of the Torah values and also principles and guidances that has enabled the Jewish people to be so resilient that we could adopt for our personal lives, that when we face challenges, we remain strong and prevail over them?
Mhm. So the world of resilience is really an amazing topic, and it's something, I know you've had various Holocaust survivors speak for you, and I also take trips to Poland, and that's probably the main topic that I would speak about, which is what gave people the ability to actually survive this craziness, and not just survive. Sometimes they even post the war lived lives which were unbelievable. But even on a smaller level, putting the Holocaust aside, their resilience is a big topic that's being spoken about today in the world of psychology. But if you look at the Jewish people have something which, if you look at the science of resilience, is probably one of the main elements of what they say can lead to more resilience. And that is when people have meaning in their life. And the more meaning people have in their life, not only are they happier, besides that, which is a separate side conversation we could have, but they are more resilient to be able to deal with difficulties and actually thrive after them. And when people have real meaning in their life, it can be something which can get them through some of the darkest and most difficult times. When I was in graduate school and we studied resilience, the person who they made us look at the most was Viktor Frankl, who basically created a whole world of therapy called logotherapy, which is all built around this idea that what allows people to really have happiness in life, and more than that, allows them to get through difficult scenarios, is when they have a real sense of meaning. And the more personal that meaning is, the better. So I think when you look at the Jewish people, I think that the Jewish people embody a world of meaning, which is absolutely unbelievable. And if I had to put my finger on what has allowed us to be, besides just a clear miracle from the Almighty of keeping us alive for a certain purpose, that what has allowed the Jewish people to persevere through a world of exile and difficult tragedies that are still happening today, my answer would be that idea of meaning is probably the key to success.
Thank you for that beautiful answer, Peter. I want to just say, if anyone has any questions that you would like to pose to Dr. Lynn, please just put it in the chat box and I'll present them to Dr. Lynn. But as we go forward, we're in the 9 days. The 9 days is a time that our rabbis say the temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred amongst the Jewish people. And you did touch upon earlier the idea that when a person is really happy, then they don't feel threatened by other people. They're happy for other people's successes. And if you find yourself being envious or insecure, it means that you're not really confident or you don't feel you're unique. And I once heard someone say, be yourself because everyone else is taken. So we do have to be ourselves and believe in our own unique purpose and mission in this world. But since this is the time that we're supposed to work on bettering our relationships between man and fellow man, and you said you do counseling with couples and with families and so on and so forth. And if you're able to pinpoint, and I know where we have very limited time to delve into very deep subjects, but on a practical level, if you could address what is perhaps the most important element in a positive, healthy, loving relationship, and what people could do to either repair broken relationships, perspective on how to go back and repair damaged relationships, or just to strengthen current relationships, whether it's between husbands and wives, parents and children, friends, neighbors. Is there one overriding theme, just like you said, is an overriding theme to resilience, which is meaning? What is the most important thing to focus on when we think about our relationships, which obviously is a great source of happiness and self-esteem as well?
I would say it's clear to me that it's the world of gratitude. I was once at a dinner party and someone was introduced, and they introduced this person as a self-made man. And I sat there for myself. I was scratching my head. I said, I knew the person. I said, let me think about this a little bit. He grew up in a very affluent home. went to the best private school, a private high school, went to college where he never had to think about student loans, had tons of mentors and everything along the way. I'm not saying the person didn't work hard, but self-made he is not. And when we look at our lives, it's amazing to look around and really think about all the people that have helped to give us our life and give us, everything that we need and want. And when we speak about the idea of trying to bring people together and allow people to really kind of form a community and let's become a closer knit nation, if we realized how much gratitude we actually owe to the people around us, whether that's in your immediate family or whether that's even more immediate in your marriage or just people in your community, the more we focus on how much people are going out of their way to give you the life that you want, I really think that's a very powerful means as far as how to get to a place where we actually feel totally connected. If I look at marriages I've worked with or people who are trying to fix things in, family dynamics, the more I can get people to focus on this idea of gratitude and not just thinking about it, but becoming much better at expressing it, I find that changes dynamics very fast.
Thank you. If we could just delve a little bit deeper into this subject of gratitude and appreciation. And in Judaism, of course, we have daily prayers to express gratitude to Hashem. We're constantly thanking God for all of our blessings, every little detail of our lives, that we open our eyes, we could stand erect, even the fact that we could use the washroom, we have a blessing to thank God for that. Do you feel that people verbalize gratitude enough in our society? And even if they feel it in their heart, do they express it enough? And how could we, since gratitude is so important, how can people express gratitude more? And it's one thing to express gratitude to your spouse, which is obviously very natural. Should parents also express gratitude to their children?
I think that there is no such thing as expressing too much gratitude. I think people, unfortunately, always assume that others know how much we appreciate them, and that's a big mistake. And if you look clearly at Jewish sources about how the Torah defines what gratitude is, if a person just feels a sense of gratitude, you got only halfway. But if you look at what the complete expression of gratitude is, not just feeling gratitude, but it's also expressing it as well. And therefore, what I would tell people to proactively work on is when you have feelings of gratitude, whether it's towards your spouse, whether it's towards your children, whether it's towards people in the community, whether it's towards your rabbi, whether it's towards anything, and you have those moments of gratitude, find some way of how to communicate that. It could be via text, it could be via some voice note with WhatsApp, it could be any way. We have 10 trillion different options on our devices as far as how to share information. If we started to use these devices a bit more as far as how to actually express gratitude, it would change relationships drastically. So what I would just tell people is that when you do have that feeling of gratitude, no matter how close the relationship is, to go out of your way to express that is a very powerful thing.
And finally, and I don't know to what extent this challenge exists in Yerushalayim, but I know maybe you addressed this in the book specifically, but you mentioned just now technology, and technology brings the whole world to your fingertips. And I don't want to speak for you. I'd rather ask you the question and say, you just brought out a wonderful way to use technology in a positive way, which is send a voice note, send a text. There's many ways to share gratitude that were not available to us prior. And there are wonderful things that could be done with technology, family chats, sharing, content, Torah knowledge, other information. There are many, many blessings. But what do you see as some of the, since you're a very modern person, you grew up in Palm Beach, you know the real world. You're also living in Yerushalayim in a very holy environment. What do you see as some of the challenges? And this is not just for children, but for adults as well. What do you see some of the new challenges, which is really a new phenomenon? The internet only, was discovered 25 years ago, and iPhones and all of this is maybe a 15-year phenomenon. So our parents' generation didn't have this kind of access to the whole world and social media and seeing everyone's lives portrayed on social media and so on and so forth. I'm just wondering if you have any insights into what are some of the main challenges for ourselves and for our children to protect ourselves from whatever the negative side of technology is, and what are some of the ways to perhaps combat it or be able to address it in a positive way, dealing with the reality that it's not going away, it's here to stay. And I don't know if we would want it to go away, because we couldn't be doing this Zoom call and learning Torah if we didn't have technology. So we don't necessarily want to, God forbid, take away technology. We just want to utilize it in the proper way. So what are some of the things we should be careful not to do with technology? And the same thing for ourselves. And like you said, we role model behavior to our children. So when our children see us using technology responsibly, hopefully that will set an example for them.
So like you said, just, I think technology is amazing. And I think that whether it's having this call right now or all the things that we can do, I think it's unbelievable. But like all great things, they have limitations and they have dangers. The two biggest dangers that I see in the world of technology are, number one is I think that relationships are damaged because people are not engaged in the moment. And, how many times do you go out for a beautiful meal and you look at the table next to you and there's everyone on their phone sitting around together as a family? Or you go to a show where parents are watching children and every parent is recording the the play instead of making eye contact and being there engaged with the child. And I think that relationships and moments are being lost, which is what really creates so much of the energy of life when you have those powerful interactions. And I think that technology gets in the way of that way too much. The second thing is really in the world of social media. And I've spent a lot of time looking to this topic, which is the world of comparison. And there's a theory called social comparison theory, which is one of the biggest problems that happens is as you're moving through any social media platform, what you end up seeing is the best of people's lives and all the places that you could be or you would like to be. And what that does to people, it doesn't allow us to engage in what we're doing or appreciate what we're doing enough. And I find that's a huge issue because, that makes all of a sudden the situation, which really could be amazing, which is the one you're engaged in, it gets dampened so much because it's not X, Y, and Z. And that's really a huge problem that I've seen. Again, it's called social comparison theory. And if of course, there are many other problems in the internet and different things, but if I think of like the real two major things that make me nervous about, if we don't get control of these things, we don't figure out ways of how to kind of counteract these things, I'm worried that the world of where technology is going can end up being more destructive than it can be beneficial.
Thank you, Peter, Dr. Lynn. You gave us so much food for thought. And I know you're just giving us the cliff notes, but I encourage everyone to go out and get the book. I'm sure you could get it on Amazon, Nurture Their Nature. And I want to thank you, Dr. Richard Lynn. And I see there is a comment here, a question. How can a parent give a boost of willpower, giving a child that first step to want to go forward? You want to end with that question, Peter?
So I'll end with that question. I think that a lot of times we want children to kind of push forward in goals that we want them to achieve. And I think that the real thing to figure out is what are the things that this child wants to achieve, or goals that they are excited by. And therefore, like you said, Rabbi Shiner, so beautifully, that when we start becoming good in one area and we start succeeding in another area, that spills over to areas which may be more difficult for us. So I think that what's really important is, it's a fascinating thing. I've dealt with this with some parents who are really trying to get their children to succeed in school. And what I'll end up doing is say, well, let's find a goal outside of school that the child can really be successful at. And all of a sudden you get that child up and running at a goal outside of school that they're really excited by. What you see is a fascinating thing, that now all of a sudden their schoolwork automatically gets much better. So I think that when we're trying to give someone a boost of willpower, the most important place to start with is figure out what they're excited by and what direction they want to go in. And then if you can encourage them and do whatever you can to support them in achieving goals in that direction, the spillover will be quite areas which are more difficult for them.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn, for this wonderful presentation. And we look forward to staying in touch. Are you going to let us know? You're going to give us inside information what your third book is going to be about?
The basic inside scoop is about probably the topic which I feel is the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to really how people can change, and that's the topic of influence.
Beautiful.
So see you in year 2030 maybe.
Nah, it won't take that long. Thank you so much, Peter, and
okay, everyone. Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it.
We're so glad that everyone joined us tonight, and thank you, Dr. Lynn. I know it's 1 a.m. in Israel, so Laila Tov, thank you for staying up. Thank you for staying up this late hour to speak to us. We're really honored.
For you, anything. Thank you so much.
All the best.
Okay, take care.
Have a good night. Thank you, everyone,
too.
for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.